Welcome to Happy Homes and Gardens. I'm your host. My name is Daphne Royse. I am a real estate broker, architecture, and interior designer. Green Valley Floral is multi-generation business. It's one of the oldest floral businesses in California. They are the exclusive growers of David Alston roses, which are popular roses for weddings and special occasions. Let's welcome John Louie, who is manager of Green Valley Floral and also Ichigo Farms, to share some insights with us. Hi, John.
Hello. Hi, Daphne.
Please tell us who you are and how your family started floral business.
Sure. Yeah. My name's John. Thanks for having me. It was great to hear about your show, and it's nice to be on it now. So it's a real pleasure. So I'm John. I'm from Salinas, California, and I work for my family who owns our farm called Green Valley Floral. And Green Valley Floral was started in 1973, and we are a grower and a shipper of cut flowers. And specifically, we are focused on growing garden roses, like you mentioned, Daphne. And we have relationships with very specific breeders around the world who are uh, have exclusive varieties that we grow. But we also grow a variety of other dahlias, Gerber daisies, cut greens, and other flowers we grow. And then we ship them all over the country and local as well. And that's our main focus as a grower and a shipper, meaning we grow, harvest, cool it, pack it into pallets, and then ship them to customers around the country.
Your family has business for 52
52.
years?
Yeah. And before that, there was other businesses, but we had started Green Valley Floral in 1973.
How was then and now in the floral business?
Yeah, then and now. So, I mean, in the 1970s, so the little bit of background maybe on the family and how we started. My grandparents are Japanese immigrants who came from Japan after World War II. So that was in the mid 1950s, early 1950s. And they actually came to America on a refugee program. So after the war, Japan was devastated, obviously, because of the World War II, and they had an opportunity to come to America on this program. And this program required them to work in agriculture, picking as harvesters. And agriculture is typically one of the industries that most like new immigrants are able to easily work in, because even if you don't speak the language, you can still work in agriculture, or you don't necessarily have to speak English and whatnot. So they had worked there for a number of years before saving enough money to buy their own farmland in Salinas and to start a farm. So that's a little bit of history of how we kind of ended up farming, was working as farm workers, my grandparents, and then eventually saving enough money to buy their own land to build their own farm. And in the 1960s is when that happened. And then 1973, they officially started Green Valley Floral.
At the same location?
At the same location. Yep. And then we've acquired other locations as well. But this for Green Valley Floral, like our main offices and packing and cooling operations are all at one main location where they started. And then so that's that's your question about how they started is being that they didn't speak the language, and neither of them had much education back in Japan. They agriculture is one of those industries where it was a little easier for them to enter, versus if you were, like, for instance, I think it would have been difficult to work like at a maybe at a restaurant because they would have needed to speak English, to serve people or something. So versus like in the field or growing plants, the plants spoke the same language as they did in Japan. They, needed water, needed fertilizer and things like that. And that's what my grandparents knew. So they were able to do that in America. Um, and so back then the business was a lot different because it didn't exist. In the early 60s and 70s, the wholesale distribution of cut flowers was basically didn't exist. Now, 50 years later, of course, it's an international, industry where we're shipping flowers from all over the world because of airplanes and refrigerated trucks, the internet, communication on email. In the 60s and 70s, that none of that existed. I mean, they had phones, but it was, limited phone calls. They charged by the minute to call people, or, they may have had faxes. I don't even think they had fax machines back then. But so there was a very nascent industry, and that was when my grandparents got in, and they had taken the risk to try to figure out how to ship flowers across the country on, I think they were doing it by back then pretty rudimentary refrigerated trucks, if not sometimes on railroads still, on some shipments. So in the 70s, they were developing that industry. So there was tons of opportunity because it didn't exist. So they were growing and growing and growing, picking up new customers. It was that concept of distribution of flowers, fresh flowers, was being developed. And now um, it's a lot more competitive. There's more growers. There's the logistics are developed, and there are new opportunities though in different sales channels. And that's what we're seeking because of, the internet and e-commerce and things like that. There are new opportunities, but definitely more competition.
Where are most flower growers in the country?
Well, first of all, there's not many left. So there's only, you can count almost on your two hands how many grower shippers there are. And I'd say the majority of them are on the West Coast,
Okay.
because our growing weather and our distribution networks are more consistent in the West Coast. So weather-wise, labor availability, things like that. But there is very, very few. I mean, very, very few left. One of the main reasons we do is the country imports over 80% of cut flowers from South America. So only 20% of flowers that are consumed in America are grown domestic.
What is the necessary environment to grow flowers? Can you produce flowers all year round?
We can, in California, yes. The weather, especially in our area, being in Salinas or Monterey County, is a very temperate weather. It's a Mediterranean climate. So we have generally cool and sunny, dry summers, and the winters are relatively calm as well. We do get rain, but it's generally calm and temperate weather still. So we can produce all year round, which is a huge advantage.
You probably don't know this, but do you heard from your parents, your grandparents about the weather, global warming?
Yeah, we definitely talked about that a lot. We've shifted crops because of that as well. We're seeing heavier impacts. We're seeing less rain. So we're switching to crops that are more drought tolerant, um, less water intensive, and temperatures are warmer at certain times of years. Our summer times are warmer than they previously used to be. We used to have very cool summers pretty consistently, and we're starting to see a trend in warmer um, temperatures in the summertime, which is affects certain crops. Certain crops like cool temperatures.
And I know you famous to grow David Alston roses. And what
Mhm.
is special about David Alston roses?
Yeah, so David Austin, and I'm curious. I would be curious to know if some of your listeners would are familiar with David Austin. But David Austin is most famously known for his Bush garden rose line. And David Austin's a very famous English garden rose breeder whose family has mostly focused on the residential garden bush that you would plant in your backyard. And they developed really beautiful, fragrant varieties that have the old world look, is what we would call it. So if you would imagine a big multi-petaled, fragrant garden rose that just looks like incredible. It's this big and blooms just enormously. Um, those are what his main focus has been in his history. But after many years of people getting to know these garden rose bushes or knowing that grandma had a David Austin, garden rose bush, a lot of people started to want them in events and weddings and in their home vases and things like that, right? So we're switching into something where we consider like a cut flower. So saying that, they wanted to cut the flower, put it into a bouquet, and have it for their wedding. But the challenge is that a lot of those garden rose bush varieties are not bred for like, shipping and handling and vase life. So David Austin started another section of his business of breeding cut flower variety garden roses. So they were all of the similar qualities, so multi-petal, multi-heart, big, fragrant garden rose varieties, but they were bred more to last longer in the vase and to handle shipping, to handle being worked with, having straighter stems and things like that. So that's what we grow is his cut flower varieties. And those are very unique because they've become very popular in weddings and events and very high-end kind of palettes and things like that.
Do they last longer than regular roses?
They don't last longer than like a hybrid tea, but they would last longer than the varieties that are in your backyard. A lot of people love to go pick the big open varieties in their backyard because they're beautiful, but they may only last for, a couple days. So David Austin tried to find that same quality and big open fragrant varieties, but have them last a little bit longer, which would be maybe to 7 to 10 days. And then versus like a hybrid tea would last upwards of 14 to 20 days, which is like a more commercially bred hybrid tea that doesn't open though. It's just kind of like that.
Okay.
It doesn't have the fragrance, and that's what, those are the more traditional, like you would see in mass market grocery stores or your traditional florist. It would be like kind of the hybrid tea varieties. Yeah. So David Austin tried. He tried to make a little bit longer vase life, but it's not like a traditional rose. Yeah.
Do they smell better than other roses?
Oh yeah, way better. And this is kind of getting into the weeds, but most commercially large rose breeders actually breed the scent and fragrance out of flowers because the scent of a flower is part of its dying process.
Mm,
So it's the senescence of a flower. So when the fragrance is intended to attract pollinators, like
okay.
bees, right? Or whoever it is. But the by you want to breed that out because you don't want the flower to be dying. It's part of that like reproductive process. So you're pollinating something and then it's creating a seed so it can reproduce itself. But you're actually most breeders breed that out so they can have longer lasting flowers, basically. So yes, the David Austins smell a lot nicer, basically
That's a
than
good to
traditional.
know.
Yes, yeah.
And I know you grow so many different kind of flowers in your farm. What are your challenges?
Yeah, our challenges are probably our biggest challenge right now is input costs of a couple different input costs, but it's really expensive. I mean, I'll start with this. It's really expensive to live in California, as a lot of us know. It's a great place to live, weather-wise, nice cities, good, decent infrastructure, but the challenge is that because of cost of living, then, you know, wages need to be higher, right, to pay for the cost of living. So in turn, our minimum wage is much higher any other state, than most other states in the US, right? So we pay a lot more for labor here, um, and especially much higher than a lot of countries as well that we compete with in terms of, you know, products. Like I mentioned earlier, it's 80% of cut flowers are imported from South America. So I don't know the exact details on what they pay down in South America, but I know it's a fraction of what we would pay for a day here. I mean, our average wage is $18 an hour, 17 to $18 an hour. Plus, we pay and offer health benefits, sick and vacation pay, 401k. That's our farm. And in South America and Mexico, I know that their pay is a fraction of that, and a lot of the benefits aren't there as well. That the same benefits that we offer. Oh, that's one of our biggest challenges is labor. Again, and it stems from being in California, right? As the times have over the last 50 years, California has become a popular place to live. You know, there's no doubt about it. 50 years ago, there was way less people living in California. And because of the internet and the news going around and et cetera, you know, people want to move to California because of that weather, and it drives the cost of living up. And then in turn, our wages need to follow suit. But the challenge is that our cost of production also goes up. When we offer a California grown rose, and it's much more expensive than our competitors from South America, it's a challenge. It's a little difficult. So those are some of the challenges we deal with.
Is any differences between flowers overseas and grow domestically?
Domestically, well, yeah, yeah, you would find a lot fresher product from us. We also grow very intensively and more for us specifically. The way that we can compete with South America is by offering such a high quality that's so far above that people will be willing to pay for our input cost and pricing, basically. So yes, that's actually our whole MO and how we've been able to stay in business is by offering high quality and focusing on customers who are interested in buying high quality. So like our strategy is not to sell to large retail mass market companies, if you would think like of Costco or Walmart or Kroger, um, because they're looking for volume and cheap prices. I can't do that. I can't compete with South America on those kinds of concepts. So what we look for and specialize in and how we've stayed in business is by focusing on the opposite end of the spectrum, which is people who are interested in supporting and buying domestic, buying high quality, and they're willing to pay the prices that we have to charge to stay in business. And I get that we can't compete with Costco on a $12 dozen of roses. I mean, that's just, you know, we wouldn't be able to do that because they're getting their flowers from South America.
And so for consumers, what can we do to cause fresh cut flowers last longer?
Mhm. Yeah, so definitely flowers they're living still and they do require some tending. So uh, cleaning the water every couple days in your vase is huge because there is bacteria that will develop. Cutting the stems a half inch, you know, every other day is very helpful, if not more. Because what you do is when you cut the stem, and if you cut it at a diagonal angle, it's the best because you give more surface area for the water to drink on that cut. But you're basically creating a fresh cut so that the flowers can drink more water. So those are a couple of good things. Keeping them out of direct sunlight, and then also keeping them in a cooler area is very helpful.
So what is your favorite flower and why?
Yeah, I think the garden roses are still my favorite. We grow a lot of other flowers too, but my our garden roses, like our David Austin specific garden roses, um, just the heavy petal count, the fragrance, it's pretty unique and pretty special. So I definitely say garden roses in general are my favorite.
And can you share about your greenhouse strawberry company at
Oh yeah.
Ichigo Farms?
Mhm. So Ichigo Farms is a strawberry farm that we started about 3 years ago, and most people are shocked that we started growing another crop and started another brand or another farm. But what I've learned about working with our family is that we are always trying to adapt and change and try new things and to take risks. So the strawberry project is what are calling a diversification in our business. We're still utilizing farmland that we own and people and managers and coolers and things. We're just using it in a different product so that we can have some differentiation in case to spread out our risk and to try new things. So the Ichigo Farms is a greenhouse strawberry farm. So we grow all of our strawberries hydroponically in the greenhouse, and there's quite a few benefits to doing that. It's a very unique process. I don't know anybody in California who's doing a greenhouse strawberry growing. I'm pretty confident that there's nobody doing but by growing in a greenhouse, it's much more sustainable and clean and healthy process. So we basically focus on harvesting strawberries from October until about now or June, which is the winter months. And in Salinas and Monterey, California, we do have decent weather in the wintertime, but it is still cold and rainy. And if you were growing strawberries outside, it wouldn't work. So we don't grow strawberries outside in the wintertime. But by growing them in the greenhouse, we can grow them in the inside because the temperature is nice and it's dry. So what we offer is local high quality strawberries in the middle of wintertime. And we grow specifically, like on the flower side, we grow varieties that are very unique, and some of them are exclusive to us. So we grow Japanese varieties that are bred in Japan, but we grow them here in California. And there's a lot of differences in the quality and flavor of Japanese varieties versus American varieties.
Can you tell us the differences?
Oh, yeah, definitely. So, in America, we have the UC Davis is a big ag school. They're actually probably the most famous strawberry breeders in the whole world. They have a very extensive breeding program for their strawberries, and a majority of varieties in America are from UC Davis. But in America, their priority of breeding was for shelf life and size of berry and production per acre. So because these growers are focusing on selling to Walmart and Costco's where margin is really important, right? We're trying to provide the cheapest, the most economical berry that can ship and stay the longest shelf life. Um, but as a result, a lot of these berries have lost flavor and texture and color because you lose that when you're trying to breed a long shelf life berry. Because when we grow berries in California, you don't know if the berries are going to stay in California or if they're going to get shipped to New York or Florida. So those berries have to be able to last a 5 to 7 day truck ride, which is a long distance. So in Japan, the country is so small that they can ship to all their different parts of Japan within 24 hours because it's a much smaller country than America. America is so big. There's, huge, huge distance. So in Japan, because their logistics are easier, and also the culture in Japan is much more quality oriented. So um, the breeders in Japan, the strawberry breeders, they wanted to focus more on flavor and color and texture and less so on shelf life and size and production per acre. So that's the differences. American varieties are much more geared towards ultimate efficiency, production, and shelf life and size. And in Japan, it's a lot more focused on flavor, aroma, texture, and color. And that's the biggest differences. So our varieties will be, I guarantee, the sweetest, best flavor and best textured strawberries you will ever have in your life. You would never be able to find these in a grocery store from a field grown. And those are the differences.
Where can people find your strawberries?
Good question. It's sometimes a question I have to ask myself because it's a new project for us, and something that we're trying to be better about is the sales and marketing side. We are very good at farming, but the sales and marketing side is sometimes a little bit of a thing we're still learning about. So we currently sell to a number of family-owned grocery stores in the Bay Area. And if you visit us on Instagram, there is some information about the limited releases that happen throughout the Bay Area. And it would give you some more information. But um, I'm not sure exactly where all your listeners are based. Is there a specific area your listeners are based, maybe, or kind of all throughout the Bay Area?
Throughout the Bay Area.
Throughout the Bay Area. Okay. So what I would say is if you could try to visit your local family stores. So I can throw out a few names here, but like Buy Right Supermarkets, Diablo Foods in Lafayette is great. Osaka Marketplace is there in Fremont. Zanotto's, Bianchini's. Some of these stores are pretty consistently receiving our berries. And then what I would recommend is if you can take into the store maybe Ichigo Farms and ask the produce department, then maybe if they don't have them, they would call us and then they would ask for our berries.
So would you consider your strawberries organic strawberries?
Yeah, so we have our pest control. We are a fully organic program, so we don't use any conventional pesticides. So we're not spraying any kinds of conventional chemical pesticides. We aren't fully technically organic yet. We are working on it. And the reason why we are not yet is because on the vitamins that we're using to feed the plants, we're not on a fully organic program there yet. So that's like the nutrients and vitamins that we're giving to the plant and the roots. Those aren't fully certified organic yet. But the pest management program, which is the spraying, we don't use any kinds of conventional pesticides, which is what most people are concerned about on the strawberries. So we don't use any conventional fungicides, conventional pesticides. We actually mostly use um, predatory and beneficial insects. So if you think of like ladybugs or Swarovski mites or Persimmilus, those are all good beneficial insects that eat the bad bugs. And that's how we control and we can do like a clean organic pest program.
And you mentioned you have the hydroponic system, and that means less water and no soil. Am I correct?
Yeah, yeah, that's great. Yeah, so all of our flowers and strawberry products are all grown hydroponically, which is in a raised pot. In It's technically a soilless medium, so we grow in recycled coconut husk. So if you think about the coconut husk water, like the water industry, the coconut water industry, what they do with that coconut husk, once they pour the water out, they shred it up, and we actually grow in that stuff.
Hmm.
So that material is it's it's a great mixture for the roots to be growing in, and then we provide the water to those pots, and then the pots actually have holes in the bottom of them. And the excess water that we don't use, we collect it in a gutter and we reuse it on the plants.
Okay.
So it's very, very water conscious. We have zero water runoff on the farm.
Where do you get those coconuts?
I think we're getting them from Mexico, so they have a lot of coconut production there, and then we bring it in, and then we use redwood core, which is in Santa Cruz area. There's a lot of redwood lumber production, and the byproduct is sawdust, like redwood sawdust, and we also mix that in, so that's local. And then
Got
we
it.
also reuse this material as well. So all that material, when it's done, we take it out and we sterilize it with steam, like hot steam, and then that cleans it, and then we reuse it. So that's a nice sustainable system as well.
And what is the relationship between Farm Bureau and local growers?
Yeah, so Farm Bureau is a great program that provides a few different things to farmers. One thing is support on and a voice for farmers when it comes to either community engagement or politics. So if there's legislation coming up and things like that, sometimes like I'd say a lot of the times I don't have the time to necessarily maybe go to Sacramento to talk about legislation that may be coming up impacting us. I can tell you for sure I don't have the time for that, even though it might be important. But Farm Bureau serves a lot of times as a way to congregate or collaborate with farmers to discuss legislation, provide us with information about what may be coming down the pipeline, or asking us opinions and how we would react to it. And then they would be sometimes speaking on behalf of us. Other ways is providing us resources. So maybe there's grants available or there's projects coming down the pipeline available in the government or through other organizations that we don't know about, but the Farm Bureaus a lot of times compile that kind of information and download it to us in newsletters or meetings. And then another big one for I think is community. The Farm Bureau provides community and networking to learn from other farmers who are in the Farm Bureau and members of the Farm Bureau. So there's a couple different things that are involved in the Farm Bureau.
What can people like me do to support local growers like you?
Yeah, I'd say one big thing is, I learned this concept in college. It was like this, there was voting with your dollar. I guess I took some political science classes in college, and as one of the most things that impacted my like most resonated with me was this like voting with your decisions or your daily day-to-day decisions, right? So, and in reality, money makes the world go round, right? And it is a big part of it. Money, that's what it comes down to, the bottom line. So this concept that I'd learned was this voting with your dollars. And we were specifically talking about local food systems. And I mean, at the end of the day, if you're going to the grocery store and let's say you're going to the produce department, right? You always see those guys in the produce department who are stocking the shelves, maybe, right? And you go to a lot of the, depending on which grocery stores you're going to, like, let's say you're going to like Osaka Marketplace or like Diablo Foods or something in Lafayette. I guarantee if you go in there, those two grocery stores they're family owned. And if you go there and they are and you ask them questions, they will tell you because the owners care about the local community. I mean, the owners are typically in the store, in the restaurant. I mean, in the store. And if you ask them, hey, I'd like to buy some local things, if it's not already marked, which it probably is marked, like I know for our strawberries, they put signage up that says local, they put a picture of our family and things like that. And I think that would be a pretty good way to do that is going to the store and talking to the produce department, maybe what they have local available, or what might be in season. And then another really, really good one, I think, is a farmers markets. Because farmers markets are regulated that any vendor that's a California farmers market is regulated by the state and the county um, on what they can sell and what they cannot sell. And everything that they sell, it has to be guaranteed grown on their farm um, to be able to partake in the farmers market. So if you go to a registered farmers market, like a county registered farmers market, those farms that are there are certified that they grow what they sell. So that would be probably one of the most sure ways to support local farmers, for sure, farmers markets.
I have a question about produce. Always have little tiny stickers and tell you where the produce from. Why
Yeah.
don't flour doing the same? Why don't they say it's made in California, from Mexico, or somewhere else?
So I think what that comes down to this concept, this what we were talking earlier about, like the politics of, things of like Farm Bureau. So when it comes to flowers, let's start with produce. When it comes to produce, there's been a lot of support of domestic and local producers and lobbying for the government to require uh, what is it? It's origin of product. So that's what you're talking about is, seeing if your orange comes from Mexico or if it comes from the US. Because farmers in America, produce farmers have fought to have that distinction labeled on all of your products, basically, because it helps the local domestic growers, you know, for consumers, because consumers would see a label that says, oh, it's grown in Mexico versus one that's, grown in America. They would hopefully go towards the one from America. So the produce industry and domestic produce growers have fought a lot to get those product of origin stickers on all of these different produce industries. So now the government requires that product of origin stickers on all these produce. In the flower industry, it's the opposite. Um, we have not spoken up enough, I believe, to ask for those labels. And there's a lot of very, very powerful lobbying going on to support imports because 80% of the flower production in the US, 80% of the flowers consumed in the US come from international imported things. So if we were to put origin, and it may have changed. I think there may be things now requiring certain products with product of origin now on flowers. We might have to double check that. But I know in the past it wasn't a thing because there was so much power in the hands of the importers that it was a little bit late to the game to have this product of origin. I do think that there is some labeling requirements now, and we're getting our domestic flower producers are becoming a little bit more vocal. But those are some of the differences because basically it's our voice and lobbying for these regulations. It's a government regulated programs to have product of origins. Um, and I think for the flower industry, we've just been a little bit late to the game as domestic producers because, it's busy on the farm and things like that.
Do you think that 80% consumer purchase flowers would have an impact on tariffs?
It is definitely having an impact. We are seeing an uptick in demand and inquiries in the last couple months because of these tariffs. I would I would say that is definitely a thing. Um, Going back, yeah, it's we've and we that's something that it's always been the opposite. There's typically been zero tariffs on any imported flowers, which is why it makes so much sense to buy from South America because the cost of production is so insanely cheap down there because the minimum wage is a tiny, tiny fraction of what we pay in America. So yes, I wouldn't say it's leveled the playing fields, but it is inching closer. Um, what the sad thing is that there's not many domestic producers left in the United States of flowers. So it's almost like little too late, but I mean, we're grateful we're here and knock on wood, we're going to just keep riding this and just be here to provide as much as we can. But yes, I would say it has definitely impacted consumption of locals.
Can we grow more? Like, can you produce more?
We can, fortunately, we can, and we are growing. Um, I would, if I'm in a very unique situation, I've got three generations of knowledge and infrastructure and experience behind me. I'm talking about my parents and my grandparents who have built these businesses and actually all still work in the business. And then we have managers who have been here for over 20 years. We've got packing sheds and coolers. Um, if I were just graduating college and looking to start a farm and looking at what it would take to build a packing shed and build a cooler and purchase farmland compared to what it was 50 years ago, um, it would be pretty daunting. So it's a tough situation. I mean, starting a small business is very difficult nowadays compared to 50 years ago. I mean, I'm just taught, even when you start to think about the details of like pulling a permit to build a building now compared to 50 years ago is a completely different process. There's departments that don't exist that never existed back then, like environmental EPA, departments. And I'm not saying they're wrong. They're bad departments. I'm just saying the process is very much different. And to start a business or to build out something nowadays is completely different. And I would be way overwhelmed, I believe, I mean, the building I'm sitting in is a 50-year-old packing shed, and with paint and, keeping things straight and in good condition, we've been fortunate that this building is still a good building. But to build this same building now, I would have to be a lawyer, first of all, probably to just do the paperwork to do the permit, versus my grandpa didn't, it's a different, it's an interesting conversation than what you're asking. Most people that like the development and buildings that are happening now and new businesses that are starting are mostly really large public corporations that have the funding to be able to go through that process. It's very sad for small business owners nowadays to conceptualize building out a business. Most people are relegated to a leasing out, where a property developer would potentially build a building out in the concept of leasing out because they have the capital to build out something, and then they would lease out to a small business owner. Which, I get that that's the situation now. It's just when I look at things like that's like Amazon is right down the street building out a 6 million square foot building, 6 million square feet. It's 6 stories, and they bought 300 acres of farmland. That's the most valuable land, I guarantee, in the whole entire world. And they built it in a year like that. I could never, even if it was 100,000 square feet, it would be insane to think that I could be able to do that. It's an interesting like time for people to think about. But that's why it's more important than ever to be supporting small businesses and building out these locals, because the balance is kind of imbalanced now. It's So voting with the dollars and supporting locals who are willing to take that risk, I think, is more important than ever nowadays.
Those Amazon buildings used for indoor farming, greenhouses, or they used for the warehouse?
Distribution. Yeah, warehouse distribution.
Yeah. Okay. So
Yes.
normal farmland there.
No. No,
Wow.
they took out, I think it ended up being 250 to 300 acres they bought on the outskirts of Salinas. And I used to farm, I used to work for a farm that we farmed that same 300 acres. It was some of the most productive farmland in all of Monterey County. I'm talking like water, the weather, and the soil was this heavy clay, like not heavy clay, it was great organic mattered clay, like just great soil, the best soil in the world. I've traveled all over the world looking at farmland, and this was the best, some of the best farmland you could ever imagine. And yeah, they took it out of production. It's
Wow.
it's it's
Unfortunate.
unfortunate, very. And yeah, it's never going to come back. And they're doing the same. There's a lot of residential development. Again, it's yeah, it's that concept of California is a great place to live, you know, but as people move here, you need to develop things to be able to support those communities, right? So if there's a lot of people moving here, well, Amazon's becoming a very um, a part of people's lives. So we need to we need more space to distribute packages and things like that. And that's what, you know, that's what they're doing is building that out. So, you know, I don't disagree with that growth and that expansion in these things. It's just something I notice, and that's like, wow, that's well, how's that? You know, that's 300 acres of lettuce and strawberries that's not going to be produced for the country, you know, and yeah, it's pretty crazy. Um,
Yes. Can you tell my listeners where is your website and how can people contact you?
okay, great. Yeah. So we've got, you can check out greenvalleyfloral.com. So that's for our flowers. And then we don't have a website for Ichigo Farms yet. Hey, we're actually working on it though. Um, my um, my goal is to have it up soon, but we do have our Instagram for Ichigo Farms. So I don't know if this is, oh, it's backwards, but it's Ichigo Farms. Um, So Ichigo Farms.
ICHIGO.
Ichigo
What
Farms.
is means? What's in Chico means?
Ichigo. Ichigo means strawberry in
Oh,
Japanese.
okay. Strawberry farm.
Yep.
Thank you,
Strawberry farm.
John. Thank you so much for your time today. That
Oh
was
yeah.
a lot of information. Very informative. Yes.
Maybe
Yeah.
too much.
No, it's great. I don't know anything about farming. I don't know
Yeah.
anything about flowers farm, strawberry farms. I have no idea, but this is great. Great information.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, thank you very much for having me. Yeah, you know, if anybody ever has any questions, yeah, feel free to reach out on our website there, on our check out our Instagram. It is pretty. We are pretty spread out in the Bay Area on the strawberries and the flowers. So if you can kind of keep your eye out and look for us out there. Oh, another one I got to mention is if you're in the Upper Bay Area, there's a company called Hey Fruit Queen, and they do curated specialty local fruit boxes that are delivered every week. And this, like, that's a really good way. I think they deliver all throughout the Bay. That's kind of why I'm mentioning them. So, um, but it's online and they curate specifically from small family local growers up and down California. And it's like the coolest, most unique fruit you'll ever. I don't know half the fruit that they buy that they sell, like cherimoyas, vanilla beans, our strawberries, the coolest peaches. That might be a good way to find us too. Fruit Queen.
Okay. I will check it out. We call mystery box.
Yes.
They do include recipes for people.
Oh yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
just in case you don't know how to use them, they will tell you how to.
Yep.
Yes. Great,
Yep.
great boxes to support local farmers. Yes.
Definitely.